So welcome to the Node.js package maintenance team meeting for June 18th, 2023. We'll follow our standard agenda of
Did we lose him?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh, it is. Okay. There.
Welcome back.
oops, sorry about that. I think I pressed the wrong button. So I'm back. So I was going to pull up the agenda, which is issue number. What issue number is that? That's issue number 568 in the repo. And let me just paste that in there. Here is the minutes for people to add themselves to the attendees. If you can do that, here, I'm just going to paste it in the chat. And then we can go to the first issue, which was number 2023, which was the goals for, sorry, it was issue number 550. And its goals for 2023. We had a pretty good discussion about that last time. And I think we created issues for most of the things that were there. I'm just looking at the issues. Quickly just going through the, we can maybe quickly recap. The document runtime support package JSON, I think we discussed that that's really going to be handled under a collaboration space in OpenJS, so nothing necessarily we need to track in the project here. The discussion on the ecosystem common keys and best practices. I think we have an issue covering that in terms of creating some ESM guidance. And Jordan said last time, he had it on his list to provide some of the feedback, and I think both Luke and Jordan were going to work to move that one forward. The launching of the scaffolding and validation tool. I think Ethan, you volunteered earlier to pick that one up, right?
Is this the PKGS create stuff?
Correct.
Yeah, so the way we're picking that up is we're basically like Wes is gonna kind of mainly own that slice as I continue to work on just the package JSON research group.
Okay.
We see a very, very bright like shining light in the future for the research work to sort of click into place with some of that functional implementation work, but we can't really do one without the other, or more so, we really can't do the implementation work without the research. The research kind of needs to come first before we do much more else anywhere. So that's kind of what's been the focus.
Okay. I'm just taking notes to that effect. We should first before we take PKGS create too much. And then to launch the impactful status board, I did see that Darcy opened an issue just a couple hours ago, I think, 2 hours ago, which was the issue number 569. And he's got a number of check marks there. So I think back to, I probably should have closed out that issue of goals for 2023, because I think we've kind of agreed what they are. We have people who own the various bits and pieces, and things are moving forward. So unless anybody has other thoughts, I'll just go ahead and close the goals for 2023. Okay, let me just taking that note, and then I'm going to close it. And maybe I'll just take a minute and put in the various issues just for easy access. Yeah. Ethan, you don't happen to have a handy link? Is there like somewhere that's where the collaboration space is being discussed?
Let me find something.
Best link to put in is, if somebody's wondering where we're actually moving that forward.
Yeah, there was, I think it was under the CPC. Give me a second. Yeah, I'll find it.
Sure. Okay. Right, and the PKG create is that issue. We got that in here somewhere.
All right, here. Here's the issue from Joe to create a collab space.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to close that one out.
Can you add, sorry, Joe, Michael, I think Darcy is in the.
Oh, yeah, okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
The
Hello.
funniest. Yeah.
Hey, we're talking about you, but you can't get in. So
Yeah.
So yeah, we were just talking about the different the goals for the rest of the year and grabbing the links for the different ones. I noticed you'd created one just a couple hours ago. Do you want to speak a little bit to that one, or just give you a few minutes if you want to?
No, I mean, well, yeah, there's two things, I guess. Yeah, I totally agree. Let's close that goals issue. There's no need for it. And I think you already saw there should be issues for, yeah, you linked to all of them. Thanks for doing that, Michael. The one I opened today, because I said I was going to open it up a couple weeks ago, is essentially just detailing what I think is going to go into the project, so folks can go read through it. There are some to do, so if we have extra time, maybe we can go through a couple of those, like in terms of the actual columns we want, like the data that we'll extract for all these projects, and then the scope of the projects. We can maybe set a definitive set, like if it's just the top 500 most downloaded, top 1,000 most downloaded, whatever that like top definition is. I think those are the types of things I want to maybe discuss if we got time. And then also I was going to share just like if people don't know about the chaos metrics, there's a whole initiative by a group in the Linux Foundation that are doing something similar to this, where they're trying to come up with quality metrics or sort of different categorization of criteria around what makes a sustainable open source project. And I feel like those are kind of good for us to look at and say, does this make sense for us to also track those types of things? Some of them are hard to get information about, like funding, right? So you'd have to go, if we were going to track 1,000 of the top most important, impactful node packages, we'd have to go through 1,000 projects and probably try to find the nuances of whether or not they do or don't take funding, or how much funding they have. So some of it can be a bit in a gray area. It's not super easy to get that kind of data out of it, but yeah, anyways, I don't want to bogart the time. Just want to say I would love to go through that if folks have time in this call. So
yeah, I think we should have a fair amount of time. We just have two other things on the agenda. One was status and update of next steps for PKGS Create, but I think, Ethan, you probably already gave the update on that front.
Yeah, I guess in addition to the PKG JS stuff, It's just doing the research. I'm about to go on vacation for 3 weeks where I'll be kind of offline, but I'm going to I'm going to spend some time this week to thanks, Darcy. I'm gonna spend some time this week to try to make sure that the whole thing, like, I don't expect people to do it like in my absence, but I will try to like make sure things are like buttoned up so that when I return 3 weeks from now, we're not like forgetting about this project or what to do or where to work on things. So yeah, and ideally it will set up the ability for it to be self-running, where if folks did have the time to contribute, they could in my absence. Yeah, so that'll be the focus for package.json research for these next couple of days.
Okay, sounds good. The other one is create doc on how to support ESM in CommonJS. So I don't know, Luke, if there's any updates on that front. I haven't had a chance.
No, I think no, yeah, I think the action was that Jordan was going to write something up, and then I was going to look at what he wrote up. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that takes us to the end of what was on the agenda. So Darcy, if you want to loop back, and I guess do you want me to open up and share the issue that you created, or do you want to share the issue? That's probably even better.
Yeah, I could probably do that. Let me just make sure there's nothing on my screen that I'm not going to be
Sure.
happy.
Right.
Close all my banking accounts. Cool. Okay. And yeah, we can't lose steam on the standards stuff or the package JSON stuff, Ethan, because I just added on it to a presentation I did the other day and tried to help folks that were
amazing.
Going to standardize things or going to eventually standardize things, I hope.
Or just work towards them. Yeah.
Yeah, work towards them, right?
Hey, half this slide is my work. I love it.
It's literally like, what is Ethan doing? Yeah, this is package standardization. Feel free to go through those slides if you want. Let me quickly share my screen. I'll do this desktop. Scary. We'll see what happens. Can everybody see my screen?
Just don't leak Volt's
There's
monetary
my email. Yeah, all the millions of dollars that I have. Cool. So yeah, this is let's zoom this in for folks. This is the issue I created. And yeah, so I guess going through the to-dos, I want to just highlight again, like the chaos metrics. If you haven't heard about this project, this initiative, it's actually another working group within the Linux Foundation. I'm not sure if anybody here has ever reached out to those folks or worked with them at all. But I know
I've heard it mentioned, but I haven't spent any time really looking at it.
Yeah, it's a great like initiative. Like they are essentially a group that gets together on a regular basis. I think they're you can find their calendar. It's very similar to like ours in terms of when they meet up. And they've been for a long time putting together different sort of metrics and also like creating mechanisms on how you could extract this kind of data for different types of health metrics for what it means to be a healthy open source project. So they have, if you go to all the metrics, like there's a topic area for all metrics, you can see there's 87 different metrics that they have that they sort of have categorized and said, like, this is what it means to have time to first response, for example. Like, what does that mean? What would that be? And this is how you could potentially calculate that. So they have, metrics for committers or the elephant factor, right? Sometimes we call that like the bus factor, right? So how many contributions are coming from, and they go into detail how you could actually, they do a lot of like descriptive work for this. But they've also created some tooling, which is interesting to actually try to pull this information out of open source projects. So one of the great tools that actually does calculate some of these metrics is something called Cauldron. I actually used to run this for NPM, so Roy might remember me doing this, but you can actually generate a report for free on open source repositories. All you have to do is basically link. So you can say, let's say this was like node projects or something like that. And then you add like the different data sources. So all you would have to do is like link all the different repositories, and so you can grab information from GitHub. And so this is an example of like the NPM set of all the open source projects that the NPM CLI team was maintaining. And you'll see that they have a section specifically on chaos metrics. But they also have just more generalized data that you can pull out. So things like activity, over time, and it's really good. Like they essentially, you can go back in time for the health and status of a project. You can see also like in terms of the community, like what kind of diversity you have, and I mean that in like diversity of contributors. So like, are they all from Microsoft? So they all have Microsoft email accounts. You can get that information through this as well. And then in terms of like performance, so they calculate also like the average days that our issues are open and things like that. So this is a really interesting tool. Like there's definitely some stuff in here that I think we could replicate or pull from. But I remember when I was looking at this, it didn't have everything I wanted, and it was kind of like tough to share this with people, which is why I ended up creating like the NPM stats board, which is this thing. So yeah, this is more similar probably to where I think we will land with, I think, this project, something like this. Again, like what's nice about this board is, you can toggle trends for issues and PRs as they're like going up. And then also you can like filter by date, very similar to Cauldron, as it does as well. So yeah, just wanted to show and showcase those tools. But yeah, like I want to maybe ask this group, like, are these initial columns, which are pretty much taken from what I was doing in the NPM stats board, like, are these the right things to be tracking? Is there anything that's missing here that you imagine could be easily bubbled up that we should be tracking for projects?
Well, one quick
Right.
question. I do remember actually at the open source summit, there was a talk which I went to that covered, I think, the chaos stuff.
Okay.
My question, so it is, I think it is interesting. My question would be, like, is there a metric there which you think is missing from what you put into the was in the status board?
Yeah, so I think there's a bit of work. Like, I'm not super familiar. This has changed a lot since the last time I looked at, which is why I put on here in terms of to-dos, like to review the 87 metrics. Like, so I'm not going to like check this off today. Like, I won't say what I just did is not a review, not a thorough review of it. And also, like, I would encourage everybody to go like read through these, because I think it really does change how, if you're supporting an open source project at your company, like, I'm sure you're not tracking one of these things properly, like today, or you're not considering it for sure. So yeah, I'm almost positive I'm missing something here that I think would be relevant, like issue resolution duration. Right, so let's just click in through this one metric. It says like, how long does it take for an issue to get closed? Like right now, we don't really have that. Like the number of issues is interesting, and so like that doesn't show you that number, right? So the number of issues over time, I guess you could see that you could probably get the same sentiment by seeing, oh, the number of issues is continuing to creep up over time. Like it's the trend is that it's slowly growing, which must mean that the time to close is actually growing as well. Time to close issues, it must be growing, right? But that would be one that I imagine like you'd want to bubble that up. And this helps tell us like the status of the project, like is it needing help? Because then you can also filter. The great thing with like having some sort of board like this makes it easy for us to quickly sort by those types of things, right? Like, so let's just go back to the pure numbers. We can quickly, and again, not to shame NPM, but it's like, okay, well, the NPM CLI has the most, issues, right? Like that's the project that has the most issues. Or, inversely, what's the most PRs? And you can see actually that it's the RFC's repo, quickly. So you could imagine if we had that number, like time to resolution, if it was like 100 days or something on average a project takes, we could sort by that and say, hey, that's the metric we care about, or in this quarter or in this year, we want to deal with trying to resolve the projects that are having the hardest time resolving their issues, and maybe there's something that we could do to help with that. And that's why being like super data driven in this project, I think, can help us just like focus our support in the ecosystem, just by first bubbling up the information and then trying to target what we want to do. So like a good example here is like, at least in this project for NPM, like test coverage used to be like way worse. Like there's probably, I think 80 plus projects in this repo, or in this project. And you can see that I think we're at like, I don't know what it is. The coverage is probably like, I would say 90% of projects now have 100% coverage. And that's because we were showing them on the stats board. So you could see people feel good when they can get those wins and sort of get themselves into that next, sort of echelon of colorization, even if you're saying, hey, like you have code coverage that's like 0, or it's like anything but 100, right? And so similarly, I think licensing is good to track, and known bad licensing potentially we could flag or color in a certain way, just to encourage like people to sort of be keeping their projects healthy. But yeah, I'm not sure if that answers it. Like there's going to be
no, it sounds like you still work. It's the plan is to answer that question out.
Yeah. But I guess just off the top of your heads, if you saw anything here that like we can also think of, go ahead.
So the other view is nice. So like the view where you have the table is kind of nice. But I wonder, like, I think each one of these, like the size, what do we care? I mean, I don't not say
No,
what do we care, but
that's
like
not
in our
on
case,
here.
Okay, so that's not on that list. Yeah,
I
okay.
dropped that. Yeah, that was like our
Yeah.
my own, like when you're trying to manage like your team and
Yeah.
you're like, hey,
Yeah, I know. I can understand if you're the author, then maybe it makes sense. But like in terms of health, okay. So, but yeah, so sorry.
So these are a little bit different. Yeah, the initial proposed columns here that I've
Right, okay.
defined are name, the repo link, package link, CI build, status, number of PRs, number of issues. And again, number of issues is one where I think you could bubble this up, but you might want to find common labels that we could actually separate these into categories. So like we were able to do that in our project. So we actually have something called priority and triage. So that's actually like 2 different labels where it's like, oh, there's like high priority issues and there's like 42 of them in this repo. And there's like needs triage labeled for 256 projects. And so these are specific labels that like our team knew about, but you can imagine across disparate projects, they're not all going to have the same labelings for their issues. We could go with some of like the GitHub defaults, and you'll probably get like, who knows, like 50-60% of projects probably just use the default bug term, right? Or feature or enhancement, right? Like those terms. And we could maybe be able to categorize things a little bit better for issues, because issues is just such a broad, people use issues for almost anything. They use it for planning, feature work, we use it for agendas, right? So it would be, you don't want to maybe like use that as just a negative thing, like, oh, there's a 1,000 issues. Like, what does that actually mean for that project? It may not mean that those are all bugs, right? It might actually mean that there's like 600 feature requests or something. So it'd be good if we could first capture that data, and then what might be good is to, take a second pass. Once the initial work is done for this, then we might be able to sort of split it up into more nuanced information. Does that make sense? Like that kind of approach? Like I want to, like, I don't think this is something that we're gonna like ever be done with. Like I hope that we keep, you know, chipping away at it and evolving it. And yeah.
Right. I wonder, like, again, incremental, some things are harder than others, but like a few things that I think that aren't there that would be interesting is information around vulnerabilities.
Oh yeah.
Like, you
So-
know, because that's one way, and not necessarily like how many vulnerabilities do you have today, but like it's kind of like we did some, Luke and I and our team did some work, and we tried to like, it was like, hey, if you've got more, and I don't know the right answer, but like it's like if you've got more than a certain number of medium vulnerabilities that are open for a long time, or if you've got, you know, if high vulnerabilities don't get fixed within a month, there's some mixture of like severity, vulnerability, and time that is sort of an indicator of how well things are.
Yeah, I think there is, if you go to, was it status badges IO? It's badges, or is it status? What's the badging? Shields IO, I think. I think they have one for vulnerabilities, which makes me think that I think they have this. Monitoring, issue tracking, licensing, dependencies, code coverage, libraries AO. They used to have, yeah, analysis, maybe code coverage. Basically anything that you can make a shield for, we probably can get that information into okay, or even this OpenSSF scorecard. So we might be able
like
to
the
show,
OpenSS, that might be an interesting one, like the scorecard value.
yeah.
But the vulnerability is like something on like, are they keeping up with the vulnerabilities is definitely an interesting one.
I'm trying to see
The other
if I'm-
one that came to mind was, is it in Sigim? Like in Node Sigim? Is that kind of a list of packages? And if it's like super high on our list, but not in Sigim, that's like something that I could see we may want to ask, why not, right?
Right, exactly.
And then similarly, let's see, I'm just looking at some of the things we report on here. TypeScript typings. That's again, like, you know, do they have typings or not? I don't, you know, that one's getting a little fuzzier, but we could say like, you know, if it's super popular, but it doesn't have even similar like ESM support. I don't know, like, I think those last two are maybe getting into, that might be getting into one that are not necessarily as health related versus other questions, but just thinking about things that
No,
might
but
be
you could bubble that information up. It might be helpful to be like, oh, this is a pure ESM. Yeah.
Do you already have in version of Node that's supported?
Yeah, so I have that here. So node version if defined. So that's pulling
Yeah.
out the engine's information.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We might even be able to get socket score.
Is that meant to be socket.dev?
Yep. No, we'll ask your employer if he's got a special scorecard from
Yeah.
WebSockets.
Yeah, G's just you know, running socket.io in his free time these days.
Well, just say socket scorecard, but I think you know what I mean. But yes, that was supposed to be socket. Thank you for. We know it. This is how I know you're awake.
Exactly. See, I'm paying attention. I'm not talking, but I'm paying attention.
Right.
This one, I'm
still
not
trying-
as sure if it's applicable, but like deprecation.
Oh.
I don't, like, is it deprecated or not? Now, I don't think any of our top ones should be deprecated, but like they could become deprecated, and I don't know.
No, that's good. Yeah, like that's again just a flag that we can pull out of the registry. So that's good to know. Because again, like if we're pulling, so going back up to maybe decide the decision around the scope, like what's the scope of the packages we should be tracking, like what does top mean? Maybe that's something we could figure out today. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting, because I just, you made me think just with that question, there could be different interpretations of that for sure, right? Like, are we,
Yeah,
you could say like, hey, here's a set which you need for enterprise deployments. And we want to track to make sure that those are in good shape. Or there could be like a completely different shape set, which would be the, here's just the most used ones, right? But those may or may not overlap.
right. So yeah, it's kind of like there is this information, which I'm not sure, it says it was only updated last week, on the top 1,000 most depended upon, which like is that's a pretty good starting point. If we're
Yep.
saying like the packages which are the most dependent upon are the ones we're going to track. You might be right that there's like individual sets of dependencies we might want to consider. Like if we can create that list, like maybe all it needs to be is just an array of names. Like this, all it needs to be is array of names, and we can go fetch that information. How we did it, going back into the status board projects previously, we just had a set of data, and it was, I believe, where was it? Project history, all data, API index. I believe it was in our maintained set. This might be updated though to do things a bit differently. We used to have go into so like just basically a JSON object of like the ID, a name, the owner of that, and then the package reference as well. And that's all we would need. Because sometimes the package has a different name than the repo. And so like the name and owner is what we use for the repo. And then I guess we just want to have a unique ID as well. So this is like all you'd have to like provide, and we could basically recreate. Like if you gave us, we could create like 5 or 6 different sets if there was ones that about, Michael, that like are like if Red Hat has a set of packages it cares about. Maybe we can track that or something for like enterprise folks.
Yeah, because I can point you at one that we already have, which is like this one. This is the list of packages that are referenced in the reference architecture we have.
Okay.
Just as an example of like, these are ones that we've said like, hey, we found people using internally. They're not necessarily like top used or whatever, like we don't want to claim anything on that front, but they're the ones that we think we've got experience with. And so
this is
some
very
of the things
similar.
I just pulled out are the things we look at, right?
Yeah.
The one
Very
thing we did
similar.
find is we needed like some exclusion lists for like, there's a whole bunch of licenses, and some licenses you look at and say, well, okay, that license actually is not on the main list, but it's still okay. And so anyway, I think I don't know if we need to get into that. Similarly with the vulnerabilities, it's like some of them, it's like, these are lasting forever, but we actually looked at them and it's like,
Right.
well, we don't really think that affects people because they're down in the development and things or whatever, right?
Yeah. Like I think we start with being as informative as possible, like all you're doing is bubbling up
Yeah.
information associated with projects, and then we can get into, like, in this case, like obviously I've done coloring.
Yep.
You're basically
Yeah.
doing grades or grading. That's where we can decide, okay, what does it mean to be a green
Yep.
value, right? So that's where that gets a bit more like we're providing guidance on whether you would be like get a passing grade basically, for your licensing or for the number of vulnerabilities, or like your maybe again we track. Another one might be interesting is track whether or not they have a support contract, right? Like
Right. Could you get support? Right. Yeah, it would be an interesting. I guess, like in the context of this group, it's what's interesting in terms of like the health / where we would want to affect some benefit or provide some value, or
yeah, that's where I go back
and
to
the
the
funding
chaos.
in that case is like, are they properly funded or not, is kind of an interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I go back to like the chaos metrics, because they do have some of this at least thought through a lot more than we like. They've had discussions around this stuff for a while. Other things like, oh, job opportunities, let's say, right? Like
Yeah.
Express might be an old framework, but can you look up job listings and get like out of 10 node jobs, they've listed Express as one of the things that they'd like to see you have, or something like that. So yeah, so the example is like, what's the question? Job postings request skills with this specific project. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the downloads and depended on are a good start, but it would be nice to not just have it be that long term. Like Sigim, it's not just like, hey, here's the top 1,000. It's more like people can, over time, there's sort of been like some criteria, and I think we could do the same thing here, where it's like, I don't know what they are, but like there's probably some criteria that says this is a good addition or not. If you could make a case, we should probably say, yeah, it can be added, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it truly just might be good to start with these and then being like, okay, well, what might be interesting is, although like here you've got like Tutal, you got TJ as well as maintainers of debug, but when was the last time either of them actually were the ones to ship a release, right? So like maintainers is a good number to pull out, but the distribution among those maintainers of publishes probably tells you whether or not the bus factor or the elephant factor is actually a lot smaller. Like there's outsized contributions coming from one or two people. Now that, again, we've got to be careful about that, because a lot of people are now using like CI and bot accounts to publish to the registry. So but yeah, again, as we bubble up this information, we'll be able to see those things. That's the amazing thing. It's like we'll actually be like, oh, this is a outlier, metric or situation, and you start to learn how each one of these projects are actually operating, which is really cool, right? Because we'll actually be tracking that and be able to slice and dice the data, and it will make our jobs easier in terms of how we can support all these projects, or how we make them all successful, and especially because they have outsized impact. So
yeah, thinking about that does, you might have had in that list, like knowing whether they've got like GitHub sponsors or whatever the other funding accounts is kind of an interesting. It's like that's more of maybe a learning opportunity for us to see, like, how are these projects that we think are important keeping themselves going, right?
It'll be something we can like talk about later and figure out. But for some of these metrics, especially if we're trying to develop a score for things, I would hope that there's maybe like some way of saying, like, how do I put it? for example, the funding defined, like projects like Fastify don't have funding explicitly because it's maintained by like folks who are paid full time. So it would be disingenuous to rate another project better than, or give a score to another project better than Fastify simply because Fastify doesn't have funding. So I wonder what there's probably some cool formula or something someone's already figured out, but we just got to be careful that we're not, rebuilding something like socket.dev where we're like more kind of like, if you ain't 100, you look kind of bad, and that can be detrimental.
Yeah, I don't think we're recreating, like, it's more just information that you can filter on. It's not that we're creating some sort of net new score based on all this information, right? Like, we're just bubbling it up, right? So we could highlight what your socket score for a package was, right? Or we can highlight what the OpenSS scorecard says, what the project's at. But we're not making any decisions. We're literally just posting. Where we could make decisions is like, okay, do we color, like, this is what I've done at least, is like, do I color that field differently, right? Like, we don't have, imagine these were all just grayscale, and it was all just data, right? Like, you're just looking at a table, you can filter or you can sort by certain things. It's up to us whether or not we want to actually, like you said, like, is it red if you don't have funding defined? That would be taking a stance on saying that, oh, it's bad if you don't have one of these two things, right? Like, that's where, like, I think to your point, like, maybe that's going too far. But if you're just bubbling up whether or not there's like, it has a funding.yaml or it has a package.json, I don't think that like is a bad signal at all. It's like a non-signal if you do or don't.
Yeah. And maybe there's some methodology where we allow there to be like almost like a third option of like funding not needed or something like that, where similarly, like, even the subtleties of it just saying like funding and it's like yes or no, there could be even if you don't color it, there's like an implicit maybe value to some of that, bubbling that information up so high level out of context. I think that's the big thing, is presenting it out of context. So maybe being able to provide like a third option, which is like not needed, will be good. And this is just like picking on this example because it makes the most sense. But I think for a lot of these attributes, we should try to be as generous as possible to make sure that this board doesn't portray the information in any way that would be like not what we meant, or implicit bias and all that.
Yeah, like, we just say explicitly, it's like, oh, there's a funding field defined, yes or no. It's not that this is funded, right? That's two different things.
True.
Right?
True.
Right. That's truly not. It's like, is there programmatic way that I can get information about how to give money to the project? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And right, like, that is not, that's, I think that's a totally different thing than whether or not the project is funded. Because again, going back to sort of like the chaos metrics that they've got, there's a lot and what you were saying basically is there's so much nuance in what that means, like, to be funded, right? Like, my time is being funded, yeah. So any other comments or feedback? Anything else that pops out? And we've already added like 6 or 7 new fields, which is good, I think. We use this a lot, and I'm not sure if this group finds this, but unlabeled issues often mean untriaged or non-templated issues that have been created, and often they are some of the easiest to close because we know that they're actually either spam or somebody has gone outside of the normal flow of issue creation. So like, I think in npm, like if you go to, let's say npm, right, I can quickly click on that and it gives me all the non-labeled issues, and you can see a lot of them they aren't actionable for the project, just because they aren't using any one of the templates for, like in this case, like this npm CLI probably won't respond to this. But yeah, that's just like one of those things that, again, this becomes also like actionable, hopefully for maintainers themselves, having some sort of kind of top level dashboard for them to go in and maintain their projects. Cool. Well, that's it for me. I'm gonna continue to probably review the chaos metrics that are there and see if there's anything else that makes sense to pull in. Some stuff's going to be easier to get than others, like anything that's already linked to a repository or anything that's already in an npm package. Like those are the two sources of truth that we were fetching information from before with the previous project. So like net new requests to like socket or even to generating the OpenSSF scorecard are going to add some overhead, I think, in terms of how long it takes to fetch and generate that data. I think we were running it daily. So this is the other thing. We're going to eat some compute running this basically like cron job every day. But yeah. Oh, cool. Do you want to talk about that, Ethan?
Sure. I was just, since you were kind of wrapping up this chaos stuff, I was going to share that. I just quickly drafted this proposal for creating a collaboration space out of the group officially. Ironically, I think it would probably be us reviewing it on CPC or something like that. So kind of meta, but just thought I'd share it, get some feedback. It's pretty simple. I don't think it needs to be much more complex than this. Luckily, we've kind of gone the wrong way, and we already have a repo, we already have a Slack channel, we already have a bunch of members of the CPC and of OpenJS already involved. So yeah, just shared that. And hopefully we'll get that merged, or at least that process is now started, and we'll be able to like get this collaboration space officially created within the OpenJS Foundation.
Sounds good. So that, I guess, we're at the end of the agenda and we have a few minutes left. Is there anything else, other topics people would like to chat about? If not,
Just the summit, collab summit.
Yep.
Are we gonna put together a proposal for a session? Are y'all all gonna be there? Roy, do I need to drag you into Spain?
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be there this time, so yeah, I'm sorry.
Makes me
I'm
sad.
going to be there. Guess the question is who all is going to be there?
Yeah, I will not be. I'm holding out for node.conf EU at this point and have too much other travel happening between August and September to be able to make this make sense anyways. So ideally I mean, I've seen how virtual participation has gone in the past for this thing, so I may or may not go through that for the collab space for this event, but definitely will be present at the later one in node.conf EU, assuming all goes well there. We should be finding out about acceptances very, very soon.
Did you submit, Roy, to node.conf EU? Or no, you got an inside?
Yeah, I tried the CFP. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, so it sounds like myself and Michael are the only ones that are gonna be at Open Source Summit. Is that right? Like you're there?
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm just not sure who all else is.
Well, we should still put in a session proposal, even if it's like a half-hour session or something. I'd like to have a bunch of work done by then, especially around this one particular project. I'm not sure if there's going to be stuff that we can share in 2 months around like the package JSON work. I'm not sure, but definitely I'm putting that as a deadline for at least the first version of this status board.
Yeah,
project.
like a short half hour where it's like, hey, here are the initiatives for the year. Do people think they're interesting? Can we get some more people interested? Would probably be worth it.
Yeah, and if we can show though like something, I think that'd be
Well, yeah,
awesome, like
I think it'd be the best if you you had the status board or whatever and show that kind of stuff. I'm not sure on the other front, like we could quickly give a summary of the progress Ethan's made on the package JSON sort of inventory side of things, if there is, depending on, it all depends on the progress on the different sections, right?
I'd be more than happy to submit an update for package JSON research at the event. Even if I cannot attend, I can either send something asynchronously that folks can read, or if the comms are set up, I'd be happy to jump on Zoom and give an update depending on timing and time zones and all that jazz.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Darcy, are you volunteering to create the proposal?
I feel like I'm being voluntold. Yeah, I can do it. I can put together the proposal for,
Because I think I'll have a few other ones that I'm going to do. So
yeah, I don't
I'm happy
want
to help out on the time, but if you can lead that proposal, it'd be the best.
Yeah, I know you're doing a million things, so I will support you and support this group. So yeah, I'll put it together and put it on my plate to get done by the next time we get together.
Sounds good. Any other topics? If not, thanks for everybody's time, and we'll see you in GitHub next time. Bye.